1,000 years of royal shenanigans, how England's monarchy survived spite, swords and suspicious accidents. It all started in 1066, or, whenever you feel like counting. Let's kick things off with William the Conqueror, who conquered, shocking, I know, in the Norman Conquest, which was just a fancy way of saying the French took over. Now, William had a ton of kids, because back then that was the only form of retirement planning, but to keep things simple, we're ignoring most of them. A brief guide to William's kids, the ones that matter. William II didn't marry and had a tragic hunting accident while hanging out with his brother Henry. Henry I conveniently inherited the crown after the hunting mishap. Adela is not relevant here, but still deserves a mention. Henry I, king of many kids, most of them illegitimate, naturally. Henry had over 24 children, but only 2 were fully legal. His son died in a shipwreck, bad luck, so he made everyone promise that his daughter, Empress Matilda, would rule next. And of course, the moment Henry died, everyone collectively forgot that promise. Cue Matilda's cousin, Stephen, who pulled the classic finders-keepers maneuver, raced to Westminster and got himself crowned before Matilda could even cross the Channel. What followed was a decades-long family feud where Matilda managed to sort of rule, but because she never had a proper coronation, history is still debating whether she really counted. Meanwhile, Stephen's kids were either dead, disinterested, or had joined a convent, so the crown defaulted to Matilda's son, Henry II. Henry II, the let's get organized guy. Henry looked at the previous chaos and thought, waiting until the king dies to pick a new king seems like a bad idea. So he decided to crown his son, Henry the Young, as co-king while he was still alive, because backup plans are important. Great idea. Until Henry the Young decided to rebel and start a whole new civil war. By the end of this family squabble, both Henry the Young and Henry the Elder were dead. So the crown went to Richard the Lionheart, who then left for the Crusades and barely bothered ruling England. When Richard died, his brother John took over. And if you've heard of Robin Hood, you know this went badly. John's reign was so bad that the nobles forced him to sign the Magna Carta, which was basically a royal stop being a jerk contract. Then came Henry III, Edward I, Longshanks, Edward II, bad at war, overthrown by his wife, and Edward III. Edward III had 5 sons, including Edward the Black Prince, cool name, and John of Gaunt, less cool name. Black Prince died before he could become king, so his son became Richard II, who promptly got overthrown and starved in prison by his cousin Henry IV. Then came the most exhausting period in royal history, where various descendants of Edward III spent years murdering each other over the throne. To summarize, Henry VI, Edward IV, back to Henry VI, back to Edward IV, Richard III took over after his nephews mysteriously disappeared in the Tower of London. Richard got killed by Henry VII, who then married Elizabeth of York to settle things. Henry VII's greatest achievement? Having a kid way more interesting than him. Henry VIII, the divorce king. Henry VIII was determined to have a son, so he married 6 women, invented divorce, and broke England off from the Catholic Church. Because when the Pope says no, you just start your own religion. Before he died of being massively unhealthy, Henry wrote down new succession rules stating 1 oldest son gets the crown. 2, if no son, then the daughters. 3, if no kids, panic. Then he left the throne to his son, Edward VI, who was a literal child and died young after rewriting the rules again, skipping his sisters in favour of Lady Jane Grey. Lady Jane ruled for 9 days before Mary I took the throne, and then promptly beheaded Jane for good measure. Mary, being super Catholic, went on a persecution spree, but didn't have kids, so the throne went to Elizabeth I. Elizabeth also didn't have kids, leading to... Scotland joins the party. Enter James of Scotland, who was descended from English royalty and conveniently available. Scotland had its own monarchy with a long line of Jameses, so when England needed a king, they borrowed one, which is how James I of England, who was also James VI of Scotland, ended up ruling both countries. Cromwell, chaos and oops, let's bring back the monarchy. James's son, Charles I, was so bad at his job that Cromwell and his buddies just got rid of the monarchy altogether. Cromwell took over as Lord Protector, which was totally not a king, except he ruled everything and passed power to his son. That didn't last. The English decided, hey, maybe we do like kings, and invited back Charles II. His brother, James II, was Catholic and unpopular, so William and Mary, who were Protestant, were invited to invade and take over. William and Mary ruled together. Then came Queen Anne, who had 17 pregnancies but no surviving heirs. Parliament finally writes some rules. Tired of this endless nonsense, Parliament established proper succession laws and picked Sophia of Hanover as the new starting point for all future monarchs. From Sophia came George I, then George II, then George III, who lost America but kept the crown. From there, the crown calmly passed down the family tree to Elizabeth II, who became the longest reigning monarch in history. Now it's with Charles, then William, then George, until, of course, history inevitably repeats itself with more royal shenanigans. The end for now. Attention, Internet people, if you've made it this far, congratulations. You now qualify for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Smashing that like button instantly increases your coolness by 327%. Scientifically unproven, but spiritually accurate. Subscribing guarantees good vibes and fewer traffic jams in your life. Hitting the notification bell may or may not summon a tiny dancing robot to your home. So go ahead, click those magical buttons before they get lonely. Otherwise, a mildly disappointed virtual pigeon will be sent to stare at you judgmentally. Thanks for watching. You're awesome.